Hello, everyone who's watching at home. Welcome back to the Be Europe show. I'm Harry.
And I'm Vlora from Eurodesk and we are very, very happy to be here again with you for the third episode of our show. And today we are traveling virtually to Latvia. Harry, do you know which is the capital of Latvia?
I do know the capital of Latvia. So it's Riga, most famously known for its Nouveau-style buildings, and most interestingly, won the title of European Capitals of Culture in 2014.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, wow, definitely worth for a visit. I also heard that Riga has over 4,000 historic wooden buildings, more than any other European city. That's really incredible. 4,000, it's a high number.
Yeah, it's a high number. And actually, speaking of Europe, Latvia joined the European Union in 2004, and their native language of Latvian, along with Lithuanian, are actually one of two only Baltic languages left in existence. So both languages are actually quite similar. I don't speak any Latvian or Lithuanian, but I've heard they're quite similar.
Yeah, me neither. Maybe it's worth asking our young person that we are going to interview today about like some few words that maybe she can learn, she can teach us in Latvian. That would be interesting. Yeah, but let's talk now about my favorite topic, food and drink, of course. So a really popular Latvian drink is the Riga Black Balsam, which consists of 24 natural ingredients and has won more than 100 awards at different international fairs throughout its history. 100 awards, it's really like a lot, deserves to be tried.
Yeah, we must give it a go. And I think while we're giving it a go, we might need to take a trip to Karosta prison, where you can actually stay in one of the cells, sleep in one of the beds, and you can even book a special experience where you be treated like a prisoner. So if you're looking for a scary night away, it seems like the place to
Yeah,
visit.
exactly. I don't know if I will ever do something like this. So, leaving aside these scary things, one thing that Latvia should be very proud of is that it's among the world's greenest country in the world. So, wow, congrats! And in fact, it's no surprise that it's the home of the first Christmas tree. In
Oh,
fact,
I didn't know that actually. That's an interesting one. The home of the Christmas tree.
yeah.
And not to change the topic too much, but in terms of festivals, we have to mention the Latvian Song and Dance Festival, which takes place in Riga every year. I haven't visited, but I've heard it's incredible, and it's also part of the UNESCO Masterpieces of the Oral and Intangible Heritage of Humanity list since 2008. So it seems to be definitely worth a trip. So I think while we're going to Riga, we'll have to try out a few things and definitely add that to our list of them.
Exactly. I wish I have something, an occasion to go there very soon. But now, after traveling virtually and discovering Latvia, sorry, I got confused because of the languages that we thought they are quite similar. So, but let's find out who are the young people living in Latvia. So, welcome to our guest, Brigita, actually, sorry, not Brigita. Welcome.
Hi, nice to see you.
Welcome to our episode and to your interview actually.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And I suppose we started every episode just asking people to introduce themselves. So can you maybe give our listeners a bit of an idea of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Brigita. It might be a bit difficult to pronounce that. I'm originally from Latvia. I'm currently a student in Ireland, which also shows how great opportunities there are for young people in Europe. But I will talk a bit more about that later. And I'm passionate about education, sustainability, and inclusion. Those are some of my topics, but I can also talk a lot about board games and things like that. So yeah, it's very nice to be here, and hi to everyone who has joined or is going to listen to this later.
And I think what's amazing is, and we made this link before we had our conversation, but to just show how small the world is and how great Europe is in the sense of the freedom to connect and travel. You're studying in Mundus University in Ireland, which is quite literally only up the road from where I am. So you've come from Latvia to Ireland, to Kildare specifically, and are now studying in Maynooth. So it just shows how small the world is. We're all seem so far away, but also closely connected. Um, what are you working on right now? So for everyone who's listening, I know you've mentioned a bunch of different exciting things there, but what's your project at the moment alongside your studies?
Yeah, so my biggest assignment currently is my studies, but I'm also working still with back home. So I'm working with young people's involvement, specifically pupils' council's involvement, so that in the future, young people would be involved in decision-making in schools. That's a big part of my life. And I'm also organizing different educational activities, including activities on sustainability, both for young people and youth workers and other parts of society. So a lot to do with education and also sustainability.
Wow, incredibly exciting.
Yeah, really interesting. I imagine and that you are super busy actually with all these projects ongoing in your life and all the activities that you are running. But can you tell us a bit more about the Erasmus Mundus joint master program? What is about? Does it consist of?
Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity, and unfortunately, not too many young people actually know about that. And it also depends from country to country. But it's a part of a larger combination of programs, I would say, called Erasmus Plus. And Erasmus Mundus is a part of the formal aspect of this program. So Erasmus Mundus is a joint master's, which means that several universities have come together to create absolutely amazing programs, starting from education to archaeology to tourism and games and literature. You can find many different master's programs there. It's usually from 1 to 2 years. And what is different from maybe local master's programs is that a huge part of your experience is traveling. So every semester in my program, every semester is happening in another country, in another university. And what is also amazing is that your course consists, your classmates are from all over the world, actually, not just Europe. So I'm studying together with people from Pakistan, from the US, from Australia, and also from all over Europe. So we can learn so much from each other as well. And what is important that young people can apply for scholarships in this program. So it's not just, unfortunately, it's also for some people it has to be paid so to participate in this, but people can also apply for scholarships. So not only your studying process is covered, but you can also get a scholarship for your living expenses, for rent and food. Depending on the country, it might be different levels of living, and there are of course many issues that still has to be solved. But in general, amazing chance to learn from each other, from professors, and to travel around and learn in a social way.
And if I can ask a question now, because you mentioned that every semester you have to change country and start all over again this process. Yeah. What is your next country?
My next country is actually closer to home. It's Estonia,
okay,
which is a neighboring country to us. And then for the last semester doing our thesis, we can choose between the ones where we were. And the last semester I was in the UK, so I was one of the last ones to have UK as part of this experience.
Yeah, exactly. Super interesting, really. I wish many other people, can apply, and now that maybe they will listen to this podcast and this episode, they get inspired by this. So
I think that's really interesting. I've never heard of the Erasmus Mundus program. I've heard of obviously Erasmus Plus and all of the different programs involved there. And I know you've been involved in other Erasmus projects as well. So you might tell us a bit about that. But I suppose, really quick question, what's your master's program for people listening who are interested?
Yeah, so my master's is adult education for social change. So coming from youth work and coming from non-formal education, I can see how education can be improved, how we can listen more to each other and learning opportunities, and also how we can try to understand and somehow tackle all the oppression and all the discrimination that is existent in the world. So this combination between education and looking at how education can maybe help solve some issues. and also how it sometimes reproduces those issues. But for anyone listening, if you're not interested in this, there are many other programs that you can apply for and maybe get a scholarship and have your next adventure and enjoy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Harry, just a question now that comes in my mind. How did you manage to get to know about this program? Was it sponsored by your university? You found it through social media? How it happened for you?
A very important misconception that I think you also just now mentioned. You don't have to be in any university before you apply to this. So this is separate. These are 4 universities coming together, and you apply for it independent of where you are, who you are. So I wasn't studying at the time when I applied. But I got to know about it actually as a part of another Erasmus project, which was my Erasmus study semester. Was it a long time ago already? So I got to know some people who were doing that when I was in Finland. And during time, I got more ready to this because it is quite a challenging experience. I got more ready to it, and I applied, and I was lucky to get accepted and lucky to get a scholarship.
Brilliant. That's interesting as well. You mentioned about the misconception that you have to be in a university to apply, and I would have assumed the same. I would have assumed that you had to have been involved in an educational institution, but I suppose it just shows the array of opportunities. You don't have to be a student necessarily to avail of them. You just have to be willing to go out and do a bit of research and to find the opportunity that best suits you. And I think Erasmus Plus generally is about that. It's very self-guided in a lot of ways. You have to kind of find your interests and find the project that matches that. So I know I mentioned that you have been involved in various different Erasmus Plus projects. Can you maybe talk about the other ones on top of the Erasmus Mundus?
So I was trying to prepare for this, but it's actually, I've been so privileged in enjoying all of the opportunities that it's kind of hard to summarize actually. But I was lucky enough to be shown these projects by my school's librarian and by the teacher who supported Pupils Council that I was a part of when I was in school. So I discovered Erasmus Plus non-formal education part when I was in school. And since then, I started going to youth exchanges all over Europe. I grew into youth workers' mobilities. So I became a youth worker and I became interested in leading my own activities. So I went to several of those, dependent on my interests at the time. And then I also started implementing my own projects. And those were both youth exchanges and youth workers' mobilities and training courses, you could say them easier, and also some kind of longer term projects. And now I'm so much into the world that I'm also evaluating projects. So it's actually influenced my life a lot, both in terms of getting to know people from all over the world, but also in terms of topics. So I've been to projects on comics in education, on sustainability. So of course, several of projects that I've been to were on sustainability and how we can somehow help
Brigita,
with that.
have you ever counted how many experiences and how many countries you were able to visit with Erasmus Plus, with all the projects that you applied to? This is like an unexpected question.
A while ago, I was trying to count, and I think those were 10 countries that I was lucky, and now I think it's more. But yeah, it's difficult to count, and I think that has been my main mode of travel. Like I'm going to those projects to learn and for the topic, not because of the country, but it has provided me with opportunities to travel, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do that because of many reasons, financial mostly. So it's around more than 10 countries, and I don't know how many projects I've been lucky to be a part of.
Really inspiring. Yeah,
I think it's when you hear about them, I think I've so often read about Erasmus Plus and all the opportunities, but you're almost a mascot for the program in the sense that you can see how much of an influence it's had on you. And I think it sounds like it had an influence as well on, I suppose, what you decided to study. Did it, in terms of the experiences that you had?
Definitely, yeah. Step by step, it showed me some injustices of the world. It showed me the influence of education, but also maybe the bad sides of education. It has showed me the potential that learning from each other can have. And it has definitely influenced my career. So I'm working in education and youth work. It has influenced my daily perceptions of the world and the ways I see the world. And it has helped me become more reflexive. It has helped me see the world a bit differently, and it has definitely helped me choose the education that I'm now studying. So yeah, and every one of those experiences has been a very important learning aspect for me. So I definitely suggest everyone trying that out. And I know that there are many problems with the programs, and I know that there are many barriers for people to face, but maybe there are some ways how you can get in touch with organizations and be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. Just read the description and try to find the program that best suit to you and fits to your background. Of course, that's a good advice for all the people listening. You already answered to my next question somehow, which was, what is the best thing you took away from these experiences? Of course, you changed your life somehow with them. So now you were able to design the path of your future thanks to all the experiences that you accumulated all the way. But which was the biggest challenge that you ever faced while experiencing all these opportunities?
So I think one of the challenges that is important to mention is the financial issue. So even though the program is trying to be as inclusive as possible and you wouldn't need to pay for your travel, it's still like, especially in the beginning, to pay for my own travel at first and then to be reimbursed was a big issue. And I think that's still a big issue for people who can't do that, and it shouldn't be that way. So young people should have the opportunity to join, even if they don't have financial means. Again, there are some ways, and organizations should be responsible for that, and European Commission also should pay more attention to it. But yeah, in the beginning, it was one of my challenges. In the beginning, it was also English, but I want to assure everyone who is not confident of their English is that there are ways to talk, and I think also those projects have helped me learn English and actually communicate with each other, because in school you might learn a part of English, which is maybe a part of English is, because I think there are so many ways how to speak English as well. So yeah, that was a challenge in the beginning, but don't let it stop you. You can learn through gestures, and you can find your ways.
I think that's great as well. I think it's good to highlight that there is challenges and there is difficulties with these programs. They're not all perfect. Nobody's claiming that they're perfect. There is always going to be challenges, but if you're willing to persevere, to find a way, and I suppose hopefully the EU will work to make them better over time, then they're great opportunities all the same. And hopefully the Irish accent hasn't made it too difficult for you to pick up English along the way. But
I was in Scotland before, so Irish is a relief.
The Scottish accent is probably a lot more difficult. So no, hopefully we've helped you along the way. But I suppose you've spoken so much about the benefits and the opportunities, and I suppose you are, as I said, almost a mascot for Erasmus and all that the EU has to offer young people. But I suppose I'm curious to know, what does it mean to be a young European to you personally?
It's again very big question that I thought a lot about.
No pressure.
No pressure. And I do have to acknowledge that, yeah, for me, being a young European is being able to travel, being able to meet people from all over Europe and the world, actually. What I do have to acknowledge as well, it's that for me, it means privilege. So especially meeting people from all over the world, it just reminds you how Eurocentric sometimes we can be, which we definitely have to work on. So yeah, there has been many times, especially during this program, where I have felt that I'm part of the problem, being a young European and having my privileges and growing up with all these projects. It definitely shapes my world. It shapes my contacts, and it shapes my professional experiences, and it shapes me as a person. And it is a big privilege to have access to all of that.
And I'm curious. Sorry, I'm curious when you mean the privilege. Do you think it's that Europe needs to play a bigger part in the world as a whole, or do you? What would you hope for the future then of Europe? I suppose when you speak of those privileges, is it just that we have an appreciation for it, or that we do more in terms of the EU footprint globally?
We should do more to not seeing Europe as the center of the world sometimes, yes. if I can say that bluntly. And we should look more at what we can learn from the rest of the world, how we can meet the rest of the world, how we can learn from each other, how we can make projects more open to diversity, how we can, again, learn from each other, because very often we, to be honest, very often I think we go with this perception that the European way is the correct way, the right way, but it's not at all. So we should look at other parts of the world and learn more about them, and also recognize our colonial past and our imperial past, and be more humble in learning from all the amazing things that other countries in the world are doing. That's a very big question and something to talk more about, but we do have to recognize our privileges.
And that's fine. No, and look, I think the European Year of Youth is an interesting year because, yes, it's to recognize all of the opportunities and possibilities, but it's also to recognize, I suppose, what we can do for the future of the EU and how we can make it better and improve it for future generations. And I think it's a great time to have those conversations. There are so many benefits. You've highlighted all of them, and I think you're an example of all of them. But it's also okay to say, you know what, there's things we can do better, and there's areas we can improve. I don't think anybody thinks the EU is perfect, but I think we're happy with the opportunities and possibilities it gives us. I know that's a big question, so look, I don't expect a very long answer, but I appreciate your honesty as well. I think it's good to recognize the challenges and hopefully come up with solutions for them.
And I think one small, but also a big problem that we are already seeing also in this conversation is that we are equating Europe with the European Union, and it's not, right?
Exactly, that's true.
So, especially now we can, again, we see another way of how Europe is not only European Union, and we always have to acknowledge that. And I think that's a problem that I have sometimes made a mistake with that, and I see other people often equating, and also people from outside of Europe, equating Europe with European Union. And it's not.
That's because of the wording, I guess. It's too similar, too close to each other, and yeah,
like Latvia and Lithuania, right?
Exactly. Just kidding, of course. I don't want to. But talking about Latvian specifically, and talking about being a European, do you think that other young Latvian people, how do they see Europe? How do they see themselves as being as European?
Again, very difficult to speak for all the young people. But I think we see it from different ways. So one of the ways we see it is all the amazing opportunities, be it I can travel, I can learn, I can participate. We also see a lot of the funding. So a lot of the infrastructure is supported by European Union. Again, a lot of the projects like soft projects and learning are supported by European Union. But then sometimes we look up to Western Europe and we have stereotypes about Western Europe. And I think we still have the inferiority complex being in the Eastern part. so we look up to the values, and we look up to the human rights aspects that some of them are still not present in Latvia. We still have a lot to work on regarding LGBT plus issues and other things that have to be improved. And then I think also sometimes we, again, make Europe in this one color as everything is amazing in other parts of the Europe, but it's not. Again, we see amazing, incredible violations of human rights in Poland and Hungary, which are also European Union countries. So Europe is diverse, and young people see it in a very diverse way. But I think the service level is the opportunities that it gives us, and the values that it reminds us of, that I think have been important in my learning experience, that it hasn't been only about meeting people, it has also been about learning the value of non-formal education and learning the value of what does it even mean, human rights. I've learned a lot about that throughout these projects, what equity and equality means. So yeah, I went somewhere else with this question, but yeah, young people see it in a very diverse way, in this traveling way, and also from the values. And I think sometimes we look up to the documentation that European Union provides, and of course a big part of it we have to implement in our own country. And often I think it helps, like data protection or sustainability issues. A lot of it coming from the European Union level helps us improving our country on a national level. Of course, we have to adjust it to our context, but so yeah, Latvian young people have some place to look up to if some of the issues are still very much present back home.
I'm curious to know, I suppose, moving on to a subject you're passionate about, sustainability. How did you get started in the field? I suppose a lot of young people listening will be, I suppose, very passionate about the subject too. And then there's some who will also want to know how they can do better and get involved and get started. So I'm curious to know about your journey there. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about that?
Again, a lot of it can be answered by European projects. Of course, we have sustainability, some kind of sustainability education in schools as well. So I got interested in that. But in this very playful and interesting way, I got to know it through youth exchanges. I think one of my first youth exchanges was on the aspect of sustainability and green tourism and aspects like that. So I got interested in it, and I got to learn what I can do better. And it was quite a long time ago. And since then it has turned into something a bit different maybe, but it has been very much present in my life, from learning about these issues from other countries all around Europe during youth exchanges. And then I got involved in it in a local level by organizing different educational activities with my peers in my town. And the more I learned, the more I got interested in it. It can be very empowering to know that you can do something also. It can also be very, very eye-opening to learn the bad state of the world that we're in.
Yeah, the challenges that we face. And I'm interested to know then, I know obviously, as I said, and you've spoken about your experience with it, it's top of the agenda in most countries, and I think in the EU at the moment. But if you were speaking to policymakers in the morning and you had the opportunity to, I suppose, set the agenda, what would you say needs to be changed, and what, I suppose, can we all do to help then? I suppose if you had that time, what would it be? What are the kind of key areas for you?
It depends from country to country again. So in our Latvian issue, I think you mentioned in the beginning that Latvia is one of the greenest countries. And it's a big myth, actually. It's a myth that we perpetuate. So we can look at Latvia as a very green country in terms of resources.
We gave a fake news.
No, it's just how you look at it and how you analyze the data. So from the resources perspective, we have a lot of forests and all that, but it also depends on the management. So how we deal with the resources that we have, and carbon emissions are still a huge issue. In Latvia, energy is a huge issue, and there's not much I can do about it on an individual level. So I would need policymakers to look more into it, how we can make more renewable energy opportunities, and how we can make our housing more sustainable. Because again, coming from living in a post-Soviet house, I don't really have an opportunity to influence my footprint regarding that. I think there's a lot more to be done in terms of transport. So actually experiencing other countries like the UK and Ireland at this point, and Malta. So my course mates are now in Malta, for example. I see that Latvia actually has some good aspects. So trains are quite widely accessible and cheap. At the same time, I think there's still much more to be done in terms of public transport. So yeah, energy, transport, and waste management as such.
Sorry, now that you mentioned exactly waste management, what is your opinion in general around recycling? Do you think to recycle your waste and whatever we consume, it's something that really has an impact on the planet, on climate change? It's something really significant to do?
In your question, I can hear your attitude, and I think mine is the same. So recycling is not the solution. The solution is refusing and reusing and reducing, because I think recycling, it can be like the last step as we see in sustainability movement. And I think recycling can also be used as a distraction. So instead of thinking about the ways how we can reduce consumption and how we can move away from this consumer lifestyle, we put the emphasis on recycling. So it doesn't matter how much we produce, we will recycle it in the end. And it's definitely not a solution, considering that a lot of the materials cannot be recycled. We recycle like few percent of plastics actually, and all the other resources involved in the process we don't get that back when we are recycling. To talk in a very simple words, we have to use a lot of resources to also recycle. In current system, recycling can be one of the small ways how to do, but we have to think a lot more about consuming less, producing less, and shifting that responsibility away from the individual person and to corporations who are producing all of that we don't need.
What is a suggestion that you can share, like in our daily life? What can we change to help a bit more in that, instead of just recycling? Because that's the mainstream thing that we are all doing, and we are just like bumped with information like recycle. But of course, it's not enough, and if we only do that, we will never change anything, of course. So, what is something that you can suggest, for example?
Yeah, those messages is one way of putting responsibility of an individual and also a young person. I think on an individual level, a big part of it is your diet. I think that's still very important that we don't talk enough about. Moving away from meat and dairy, which are very harmful practices in terms of waste and carbon emissions and territory that it actually takes, land use. So if you want to do something on an individual level, I think shifting to vegetarian or vegan, or even like once
reducing
a week.
a bit.
once a
exactly.
week becoming vegetarian. It's super interesting. It's super healthy and tasty. So doing that, I think is very important. And I would suggest looking at some of the political ways how we can influence. So writing a letter to your local municipality, being a part of youth organization that works with that, going on protests, writing to your national government, writing to a corporation that does something harmful for people and environment. So some of those small but politically important things is something that young people are doing very actively now, and I'm super grateful for all the young people that are active in this. And I think that has to be done more. So even though there is a lot we can do on our daily basis, using bicycle or walking, not taking planes, eating in a vegan way, recycling and all of that stuff, reusing, rethinking how much we actually need. Even though all of those actions are important, and I encourage everyone to do, it's also important to be active politically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one thing now, because I know that in Latvia there is also this big cleanup ongoing every year, which is this movement of all people that would like to clean an area, which can be a river or a garden or a park or something. I don't know if you have ever had the chance to participate, because you are always all around the world, of course, so probably you have never done that. But what is your impression around this thing? This is something like to, share the information and the sensibility around this topic is something that you value as a process. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I was actually a part of it. It's a big tradition. I was a part of it when I was back home. And it actually has some long historical roots. So it has been going on for a long time, and also in Soviet Union and previous to that. I think it's a good way to get to know your local environment. That's an important aspect. It's an important way to get to know your community. So I wish those activities would have more of like community building and educational aspect of it. So it's interesting to meet some people that you're going on a cleanup with. I don't think it has a huge environmental impact. It looks better after the cleanup, but I think the biggest environmental impacts are not solved through that. But it is a very nice way to get to know each other, to get to know your town, your local forest.
Yeah, I also think that it's really important because you are able then to see how dirty is the planet somehow, how dirty is an area. Maybe sometimes we just pass in front of something and we just don't give attention to what's surrounding us. And then when you really go there and clean, you are able to see how many cigarettes, how many papers are in the street, how dirty it is actually. So you will take more attention the next time that you are just there in the process of throwing something in the street. So
yeah, but at the same time, often the people who are going to clean it up are not the same people who would maybe leave their waste there. That's also an aspect. But I do think that cleaning up one area 3 times in a row might decrease the amount of waste that ends up in that area, and we might appreciate our surroundings more. What is interesting from the educational perspective of that as well is that a few years ago we started also encouraging people to sort waste. So before that, we collected everything from the surroundings or the forest and just put it all in one bag. And then we started understanding that some of that can still be recycled, especially like glass, which can be recycled many, many, many times. So we started sorting, and I think that was a very important and good step.
And I know you are working on a lot of different projects, a lot of exciting projects. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about what you're working on at the moment and what your kind of plans are in terms of, I suppose, future projects maybe?
Yeah, at the moment we are working with those pupils councils, with Education Center together. We are looking at how young people could influence the decision making at their schools better, how we could help them learn more about it, and how the administration could learn more about the involvement of young people. But from the sustainability perspective, of course, people's councils can also be a big and important tool in sustain, or partners, I would rather say partners in sustainability. I think from that perspective, a very important project for me has been a youth exchange, Youth for Less Waste. It happened several years ago, and we organized it several years ago, but it's still so important for me, and I learned so much through it. The basic idea was that young people from Norway, Latvia, and the UK came together in Latvia, and we were traveling from almost the capital, my town near the capital, to the west coast. So it was around 300 kilometers that we were traveling, cycling, and we were learning from each other about ways that we can do and the practices that we can change, and that has to be changed on a political level. And that was very, very important for me, and also for other participants of that. It was important both from the content, how much we learned from other countries and other young people on topics like energy or transport or social justice and environmental movement, but also from the organizational perspective. So we were the ones who were writing the project, who were contacting each rural restaurant on vegan food. We were the ones who were actually cycling, writing the report, and all of that. So that has been a very important project for me that I would like to maybe repeat in some way in the future, because I can see how this movement and being close to nature and this type of project can help young people understand their realities and learn more from each other. And
that collaboration is great, and I think it's important as well. I think the fact that young people are coming together and working together towards a common goal, it's great to see, and it actually ties in nicely with my next question around the European Year of Youth. And I know you spoke previously about, you know, the need to get up and write a letter to your local government or to your representatives and to have your voice heard, and that's what this year is all about. But I suppose, what are your plans for the European Year of Youth, or even what are your hopes for the European Year of Youth? It might be a little more general, and for this year.
I really hope that this year is a big reminder, and it becomes not just a checklist, like not just a point on our checklist to involve young people in decision making, but to actually remember that and to see the big value of it, because it's not a service that we do to young people to involve them. It's actually, we make decisions in a very much better way if we involve young people and other marginalized groups of society. So my plans for the year is to become maybe more involved in this. Like, so far I've been, our organization is a part of the Latvian organizing level, but maybe to look more into this and be more a part of this, but also to make sure that we keep involving young people in decision making, and we keep listening to them, not just as a decoration, but in actually like
in an effective and concrete way, of course. And what advice would you give to young people listening, even if it is in the future, this episode? Like, what can you share with all the young people around there?
I've talked a lot about all the amazing opportunities.
Beside of all the experiences that you had, of course.
But that's my main advice, to look at those opportunities and enjoy them. And also my advice is to remember that not everything is in our hands. I think that's very important, because sometimes We think that only if we try hard, we will get there. But there are big systems of oppression. There are big discrimination issues. So programs and decision makers still have a lot to do in terms of actually letting young people enjoy the opportunities. So remembering that not everything depends on the individual, not at all. But on a more cheerful note, I really encourage everyone to look up Erasmus Mundus or Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps, and see that you can be a part of the solution, and you can learn a lot from other people and learn a lot about yourself as well throughout.
That's super true, really.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you so much for your time, Brigita. We really appreciate it. I think it's a lot of learnings in there as well. I think you've highlighted so many of the positives of all those programs and initiatives, and I think a lot of people will do research after hearing this, but you've also highlighted the challenges as well, which are important. And as you said, hopefully the European Year of Youth will have a lasting legacy that isn't just 1 year, but I suppose helps to build a youth inclusive future that really does lay down the path for a promising future for our generation and the generations that will come as well. So thank you very much. I think I've learned a lot from the conversation. I'm sure Vlora,
me too, actually. It was really, really rich.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we also close the episode. Thank you everyone for listening and participating with us even virtually. So we see you on the next episode then. Bye-bye.
Bye.